these are the lecture notes for Chapter 1. And Chapter 1 is basically an introduction to anatomy and physiology. So let's look at the topics. The basic functions of living organisms, the relationship between... Okay, so you are going to need to know that anatomy is structure and physiology is function. So when we study anatomy and physiology, we study both of those together. And the structure determines the function. So that's how anatomy and physiology are related. The structure or the anatomy determines the function or the physiology. So just kind of keep that in mind really throughout the course. That's the overall theme, as well as homeostasis. So the major levels of organization, starting with an atom and going all the way to an organism. We'll go through those. Make sure that you are familiar with, that you know the names of the 11 organ systems, and then that you're familiar with some basic structures that are parts of those organ systems. We will cover homeostasis. We will cover negative and positive feedback and how those mechanisms regulate homeostasis. Then you're going to need to memorize some stuff in this chapter. You're going to need to know the body regions, I don't know, the underarm region is called the axillary region. Things like that. So there's a name for every single body part, body region, and you'll need to know those, and as well as some other terminology, like what we also call medical terminology. You may have even taken that class. But anyway, okay, so biology is the study of life. That's the definition, and anatomy and physiology is a component of biology. Okay, so all living things share these 5 common functions. They have responsiveness, means that they are able to respond to stimuli. Growth, they're able to grow larger and develop or change over time. Reproduce, that just means produce offspring. Move, and that would be internal movement as well as external movement, being able to move your body, and also the movement of, say, blood throughout your blood vessels. And metabolism are the chemical reactions that occur inside of your cells. So responsiveness, this is responding to a change in the immediate environment. We also call it irritability, which doesn't mean being irritable or angry. It's just, irritability just means being able, responding to changes in the environment. So an example of that would be you touch a hot stove and you move your hand away because it hurts. You may even move your hand away before it hurts a lot because you know it's going to hurt, subconsciously you know. But that is an example of responsiveness. Another example of responsiveness, I want to give you one that you're not really aware of. So your body responds to, for example, you've eaten a meal. So your digestive system begins to respond by digesting that meal, by going through the stages of digestion and digesting that meal. So sometimes responsiveness is not something you are consciously doing. It's something that's automatic inside your body, and your body systems are taking care of things without you even knowing about it. Now, you also need to know the definition of this word adaptability, and that's the capacity to make long-term adjustments. They give an example for animals that have fur, but let's see, for humans, the capacity to make long-term adjustments. We know to put on a coat. We don't grow a coat of fur, but we know to put one on whenever we're cold, and we know to take it off when we're hot. So that would be an example of adaptability in humans. So responsiveness, remember, is just responding to a change in the environment. Growth can mean getting larger And that can happen by the cells, your actual body cells, getting larger or dividing and creating new cells. So most of the time when we grow larger, it's because our cells are dividing and we're increasing our number of cells. Another thing that happens during growth is cellular differentiation. So when we are formed, the very first cell that becomes us is called a zygote. And when that zygote begins to divide, the cells that form initially are like identical to the zygote. But if all those cells just stayed the same, if none of them became different, if none of them became muscle cells or nerve cells or skin cells, then we couldn't be a complex organism. So our cells also, in addition to growing, they also differentiate. They become specialized. All right, reproduction is creating new generations of the same type of organisms. So when humans have babies, offspring, that's reproducing. Movement, again, can be internal or external. Internal movement is transporting blood, food, air, body fluids within the body. External movement is actually when we walk or when we swim or when we, like right now, my mouth is moving, so that's external movement. Then we have metabolism, which I've just highlighted one. This is just the definition of it. It's the sum total of all the chemical reactions or operations that occur in your cells, in your body cells. So all of the chemical reactions that occur in your body is your metabolism. Some of the examples of those metabolic processes or chemical reactions would be respiration. We call that cellular respiration, which occurs in the mitochondria of our cells. Digestion, which is breaking down complex food into simpler nutrients that we can absorb into our bloodstream. So the breaking down of those complex foods into simpler molecules is digestion. That's part of our metabolism. Excretion, which is eliminating waste products generated by digestion and respiration. So these are different metabolic processes. We also, what's not included here, these all are digestion and excretion have to do with breaking down and getting rid of waste, but we also have reactions where we build molecules. We have to make enzymes, we have to make hormones, we have to make chemicals that are used for our body structure, and those are part of our metabolism as well. All right, for anatomy, the word anatomy in Greek means a cutting open, and it is the study of structure, internal and external structure. So anatomy, just associate the word anatomy with the word structure. Gross anatomy means large, like it means large enough where you don't have to use a microscope to see the structure. So gross and macroscopic mean the same thing. This is when we study body parts that we can see without a microscope, with the unaided eye. And microscopic anatomy is going to include basically two studies. Cytology is the study of cells, and histology is the study of tissues. There are 4 tissues. So we will cover cytology in chapter 3, and we will cover histology in chapter 4. There are 4 tissue types that we will cover in chapter 4, 4 main tissue types found in the human body. Now, so anatomy is structure, physiology is function. That word also has a Greek origin, but just always remember anatomy is the structure, physiology is the function. And there's some areas of physiology you can look at. You need to know the levels of organization in order from simplest to most complex. Make sure you know these. It's going to be atoms, combinations of atoms form molecules, combinations of molecules. Actually, I'm going to add one in here. And this always is, I hate doing this because I have to use a mouse, but In between molecules and cells, we're going to write the word organelles. Okay. This is why I hate it. I always have to do some special things to get my pen to work. That's ORGANELLES. Okay. Let's see if I can get that off of there. Okay. So it's organelles. There we go. Okay. Not very pretty, but you're going to have atoms form molecules. Molecules build the structures that we call cell parts or organelles. And then cells. So the organelles together make up the cell. And then a group of cells is a tissue, a group of tissues is an organ, and a group of organs that work together is an organ system. And then all together, that makes the all the organ systems in the human body, which is 11 organ systems, composes the organism. So that is the list that you need to learn. Atoms, molecules, organelles, cells. Oh, I went backwards. Atoms, molecules, organelles, cells, tissue, organ, organ system, organism. So you may want to write that down somewhere in order. Go back and just write those levels down in order. Here's an illustration of the levels of organization. And so we have, let me do a highlighter. Okay, so we have atoms form molecules. Molecules form larger molecules, which we actually call macromolecules. And then what they're showing here is molecules that are forming these protein filaments called actin and myosin that are actually part of the cell. So they're cell parts or cell organelles. And I know the word organelles is not in this list, but don't forget that molecules form the organelles that actually together make up a cell. So cell parts and organelles are the same thing. And what you're seeing here are organelles or cell parts that are protein filaments. And they're actually actin and myosin, which are protein filaments that compose muscle tissue or muscle cells. So we have molecules, organelles, cells, and then cells combine to make up tissues, and tissues combine to make up organs. So we've got cardiac muscle tissue that composes the heart. The heart is actually composed of cardiac muscle tissue, some connective tissue, epithelial tissue forms the lining of the inside and outside of the heart. And then the organ system would be called the cardiovascular system. And then the entire person is the organism. And that's all the combination of all the organ systems. Okay, so it says identify the major levels of organization of the human body from simplest to most complex. So let's do this. Let us answer this one. I don't really want that to be number 5. I just want to type. Hopefully I can. So we want to go atom, molecules, atoms form molecules, molecules combine to form cell parts called organelles, organelles combine to form a cell, groups of cells combine to form tissues, groups of tissues combine to form organs, and groups of organs combine to form an organ system like the cardiovascular system or the nervous system. And all 11 organ systems form the organism. Okay? All right, so you definitely need to know this in order. And then this is a list of the 11 organ systems, and we're about out of time, so we'll start with the integumentary system when we come back. But it's integumentary, skeletal, muscular, nervous, endocrine, cardiovascular, lymphatic, respiratory, digestive, urinary and reproductive systems.